Hey, how y'all doing? Right now, I just basically want to summarize the Dr. Ivan Vincertima video, just to drop a little knowledge about African presence in America before Columbus. It's interesting because the whole idea that Africans were in America before Columbus actually came from Christopher Columbus himself. He wrote this in his personal diaries, and basically he said that Africans came to the Americas long before Europeans, and they came as masters, not slaves. The Portuguese at the time, who Christopher Columbus sailed under in one of his voyages, they actually had forts down in Africa, Cape Verde, and they basically had knowledge from the natives that that Africans have been sailing to the Americas using a current that takes you from the coast of Africa, the west coast of Africa, to the east coast of South America. Basically, this current is 100 miles off the coast of Cape Verde, and it takes you all the way, like I was saying, from Africa to the northern tip of South America into the Caribbean Sea. John Boyd Thatcher, who had put together a collection of artifacts in the Library of Congress, and actually had Christopher Columbus's personal diaries compiled. He remarks that Christopher Columbus remarks that he actually traded with the natives for gold-tipped spears, which the natives had traded with Africans a long time ago. They said they traded with them a long time ago to get these spears. He took some of the spears back to Spain, and the metallurgists in Spain there studied the spears and broke down the composition of the spears, and actually found that they were identical to spears used in Africa. Columbus himself also remarked that the natives had skin pigmentation from red to dark, to very dark skin, and some other explorers actually said that these people look just like Africans. Something that's very interesting to note is that the Egyptians are actually thought to be the oldest culture to be in the Americas. There were Egyptian trade posts found, and even artifacts found as far as Hawaii. All the early written languages of the major civilizations of America were written in the same structure as the ancient Egyptian language. The Egyptians traveled to America using the currents off the coast of Africa in boats made entirely from papyrus, and papyrus is a reed that goes along the Nile Valley. In fact, in 1969, explorer, well, he's not really an explorer, he's really a adventure seeker named Thor Heyerdahl. He sailed along with a scientist as well as Egyptian and Ethiopian people who basically knew the ancient techniques of how to build papyrus reed boats. They constructed a papyrus reed boat and they sailed to the Americas. And what happened was the boat actually failed to get to the Americas, but it was not because of the boat itself, it was because of user error. And this is admitted by by Thor Heyerdahl and his party. And basically they cut a line on the boat, which basically took away the structural integrity of the boat, and it caused it to capsize, or take water and start to capsize. Papyrus and wood pulp paper was actually developed by the Egyptians, and it was used exclusively by them. And it's interesting because we see this technique also used by the Olmecs. You also see step pyramids and conical pyramids from the Olmec civilizations. And in fact, the Great Pyramid in Levanto and the Great Pyramid in Giza have the exact identical dimensions. And they were used for the same purpose, actually, too. The capstone was removable from both pyramids, and it was built according to the stars. The Olmecs used many of the same gods that the Egyptians did. If you look at the artwork and put them side by side, it's undeniable. And you cannot mistake the two religions because they are identical. Also, just like the Egyptians, the Olmecs were depicted using the flail and crook, and when their statues actually of kings with their hands crossed and open, like the Egyptians would do. They also used purple to display nobility, which actually comes from ancient Egypt. And all of these are similarities between the Olmec culture and Egyptian culture. And the Olmec civilization, when many explorers first got there, and archaeologists after them when they got there, they noticed that there were some huge, massive 6 to 9 foot basalt stone heads. And all the archaeologists and explorers who noticed the heads basically remarked how negroid the huge heads were. And by negroid, obviously I mean black. Broad nose, broad lips, the cheekbones, black man. These are all black men. The massive stone heads they had. So actually, the first one that they found, there's pictures of it in the Smithsonian, where it has not Egyptian, but Ethiopian braids, actually carved into the stone head to further depict, the detail that they're using to show that these were actually African people. Also, they were using. Also, the basalt heads had they had helmets that were used by the Egyptians and the Ethiopians during the time. So these stone heads had to be of generals, or at least warriors, kings, along that line. Also around the stone heads, there are terracotta figures that were found that had African features, as well as they were so detailed that it even showed African hair as well. And some of the clays had sediments added to them to make them more darkly colored, to show the race more clearly of who were the people there who influenced that culture. And lastly, I want to leave you with this. The Olmec civilization began approximately around 1400 BC. The Egyptian civilization began around 6000 BC. So it's clear to see who really influenced who. The Egyptians came to the Americas and transported their cultures to the people that were here in the Americas, interbred with them, and here we are. It's interesting that we don't know that history about ourselves, isn't it? It definitely make you look at Columbus and African history as well as world history a lot different. Thank you, y'all.